Good morning. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on Wednesday, June 10th, 2020, in accordance with the provisions of the Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. It's being broadcast live on Channel 18 and recorded for the archives. Today's hearing is being conducted by a remote video conference, pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency orders prohibiting the gathering of large groups of people. Every effort has been made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. The agenda and the copies of documents for review today have been posted on the town website and can be accessed there. Since the start of the emergency period on March 10th, the Commission has scheduled applications for hearings in the order in which those applications have been received. I'm hereby exercising the authority conferred on me by Section 17B5 of the Act of 2020 as the Chair of the Conservation Commission to declare that the following applications have been scheduled for a hearing on August 26th, 2020. 40 Gamies Lane, 229 Scattery Road and 36 Whistler Lane, 203 Cross Street, and 56 Jericho Lane. These dates will be sent out to everyone on the Conservation Division email list and posted on the town's website. The Commission understands the concerns expressed respecting the scheduling of applications during this emergency period and have indicated a willingness to meet more often to move the backlog through as quickly as possible. Today, we have some reason to be hopeful that the Conservation Division that supports the Commission will soon be receiving additional resources, which would allow us to adjust our scheduled hearing dates and move applications through quicker. If and when we're able to change the hearing schedule, we will notify all applicants of the change and post it on the town website, so stay tuned as we move through this process. A note for today, a reminder that persons watching on Channel 18 who would like to participate in the meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the phone number that's displayed on the screen. And a second reminder again to all participants to please mute yourselves if you are not already muted. If you are on the phone, mute by hitting *6, unmute yourself to speak. As we consider each matter, I'll be asking for comment and questions first from commissioners and then from participants on the call. Please let us know if you wish to speak by unmuting and stating that you wish to ask a question or make a comment. And if I forget to ask for comments or questions, please speak up so we don't miss you. Please know that the chat box feature is not monitored and it should not be used for indicating you want to speak. All commission votes today will be by roll call. So that we have a record of the quorum of the commission attending today, I'll now ask each commission member to indicate their presence on this call by stating their name and if they're present. Commissioner Holt.
E. Holt, here.
Commissioner Kitts.
Joe Kitts, present.
Commissioner Rawls.
Bob Rawls, here.
Commissioner Delvecchio.
Commissioner Delvecchio, present.
Commissioner Clark.
Commissioner Clark, present.
Okay, I'm Janet Williams. I'm the chair of the commission. I'm here and I open this hearing at 9:08 a.m. The following applications have been continued at the request of the applicant. So if you are here for any of the following applications, they will not be heard today. Callie, let me know if I get these right.
Sure.
305 Main Street. And
Yep.
34 Hallway Street.
Correct.
Any others?
14 Pine Ridge Road.
Okay.
And those are the continuations that I've received.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, there is one more. I apologize. 271 Forest Beach Road.
All right. All right, and with that, I think we are ready to head to our first item on today's agenda.
Okay, it's a discussion, zero parcel 4B, Robert B. Berlin Revocable Trust and 284 parcel 7 Kendrick Road. Ann B. Reese, qualified personal resident trust owner. Tim Reese is the applicant. This is a Tim Reese was the applicant when this was originally noticed. It's under SC 10-3275, proposed elevation of single-family dwelling of a FEMA-compliant foundation, reconstruction of garage, installation of elevated septic system, beach nourishment, and planting improvements at 0 and 284 Kendrick Road, Assessor's Map 14K, Parcel 7 and 4B3. The commission will discuss the nature and scope of the activity at the site with particular focus on the volume, location, and suitability placed on site, of sand placed on site.
Okay, thank you, Callie. So for context, we had asked to have this conversation today to learn more about particularly the volume of the sand placed under the order of conditions that was issued by the commission. We're going to postpone that conversation because there will be a meeting next week held at the site with the engineering firm that's responsible for the project, and the conservation agent will be there. And hopefully that meeting will produce the information that the commission is looking for in a better way than trying to do it in an open hearing. So we will get the information about the volume of the sand. This is also, just by context, moving quickly toward completion, and indications are that the applicant will be providing an as-built survey in preparation for requesting a certificate of compliance in the near future. So we will have a lot more detail about what exactly the operation and the activities that were done on site as we move through that process. So since it was a discussion, I don't believe there's any need for a vote of the commission to postpone that conversation. So we will move on then to the next item.
Okay. Janet, did you want to move up the 41
Yes.
Wood Cover Knoll?
Yes, we have an item that that should have been listed in discussion that we're going to move up to the top of the agenda now.
Okay.
Get out of the way.
I'll just quickly read this. 41 Wood Carver Knoll, cutting of salt marsh grasses and vegetation in a bordering vegetated wetland. And just so you're aware, I know that Steve and Mary Keating are, and maybe just Mrs. Keating are present on the call. So I just see her unmute herself. So
Hello.
Yes, good morning, Mrs. Keating.
Good morning.
I just want to, we're moving this up partly because we don't want to take up too much of the Keating's time with it, and partly because due to an error that I made, and I take ownership of this, it was listed as a violation. It is not a violation. The commission hasn't made any findings, and in fact, the order of conditions for this project has not yet been issued. We received reports of activity in the salt marsh and the wetland at the site. Callie went out and investigated it. We've had a number of conversations with the Keatings over the last few days. And what we've learned is that Mrs. Keating is undertaking to remove and manage some of the invasive Phragmites that are migrating onto her property from an adjacent property. And so I talked to Callie, and I'm going to ask Callie now to weigh in with, she's also spoken to Mrs. Keating about how to resolve this, with the understanding that the commission applauds and supports efforts being made to remove and manage Phragmites. It's terribly destructive, but with that, the commission also wants to be sure that activities that are carried out in sensitive resource areas are being done appropriately by people who know what they're doing, because even with the best intentions, it can result in more damage than good. So with Callie's help, we're finding a way to move forward to allow Mrs. Keating to do this activity.
okay. I had a conversation with Mrs. Keating yesterday afternoon, and she was very apologetic for removing the Phragmites in a resource area, and I told her that she needed a permit in order to do those activities. She was very apologetic. I recommend, and I spoke to Mrs. Keating about this, that we write a letter to Mrs. Keating summarizing that she conducted work in a resource area without the benefit of a permit. And I also talked to Mrs. Keating about the fact that since the order of conditions for the catwalk for 41 Wood Carver Knoll includes some plantings underneath the catwalk, and the order has not been issued at this point, that maybe the best way to resolve this is to include some of the Phragmites, like a finding and a special condition for removal of the Phragmites into that order of conditions. If the commission is okay with that process or that idea of how to move forward, then I think the thing to do is to ask Mrs. Keating to provide some documentation for how she's going to remove the Phragmites in the resource area and what she would like to do for the management of that Phragmites over time. I spoke to her quite a bit, and she does not want to use chemicals at all. She's cutting the Phragmites and dousing them with salt water after doing some research on that. I had urged her also to talk to Teresa Sprague, who did the initial planting for 41 Wood Carbonol. And so I think the commission has a couple of options here. We can ask Ms. Keating to provide some information on the Phragmites and how she wants to manage it. We can have her do that and also have that reviewed by Teresa Sprague. I think the easiest way to permit this, if this is something that needs to be done on site, is just to include it in the original order for the catwalk, which also includes plantings.
Okay, thanks, Callie. Commission members, is everybody clear on what's happened and how we're thinking about resolving this? I'm open. Anyone have questions about it?
Yeah, Commissioner Holt, I do. I don't recall who was doing the plantings under the original order.
That was Teresa Sprague, Blue Flax Design.
Oh, okay. So it would make sense then that they would just expand their work order to include the Phragmites.
Well,
Yeah.
Mrs. Keating will be doing the removal. So what we're asking Blue Flax to do is to review Mrs. Keating's proposed process for the Phragmites and to let the commission know that it's appropriate. I mean, we could maybe ask her to do some oversight. Mrs. Keating is trying to manage this herself and reduce the cost of having somebody else do it.
I mean, I guess there are other issues too, not just the straight removal, but also access, being careful not to, is it in the BVW or the marsh?
It's in the BVW and maybe a slightly at the edge of between the BVW and the salt marsh.
I mean, normally, wouldn't we ask just for some, and I guess that's what you're going to ask from Mrs. Keating is basically a work protocol, what she would do and how frequently and when and all of that.
And she's done a lot of research on this. She has a scientific background as an individual, and so she did a lot of research prior to this, and she was very apologetic about not having a permit before she started to do the work. And I just thought, since Teresa is going to be on site anyways for the plantings, that almost sort of works in the oversight, Teresa's oversight on the frag as well. Because she's already going to be on site for the plantings.
Okay, yeah, oversight is, I guess, a good term that would satisfy, I think, what I'm requesting.
This is Bob Rawls. So going forward with this, how would Phragmites be handled on the property 3 or 4 years from now if we included that as part of the work order? I assume that Mrs. Keating would want to continue to keep Phragmites out.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Well, so I don't know if you recall from our earlier applications for the catwalk, but this is our family home. We are making this a generational home, and this is a home we will live in for, we hope our grandchildren will take this home. And so given that, we'll be here to make sure that whatever we're allowed to do, we'll be able to carry forward appropriately. The Phragmites are going to continue to be a problem because we have a serious issue down at the Oyster Pond condominiums. I don't know if any of you all have been out on the water, but it's just worsening and worsening in all the properties around us. So during the construction of this house, well, the transfer of ownership and the construction of this house, those Phragmites invaded our property, what is now our property, and were blocking our path. So I thought I was actually protecting my land, and I didn't touch the BVW, or whatever you call it. I actually really just touched the marsh because those Phragmites had taken over the salt marsh grass. So I took them down, I cut them down, and I flooded them with salt water. And I'm pleased to report that the grass is returning a lot. I mean, it looks great. So that would be what I would continue to do. The other piece too, when you say, when would I do it? I did investigate how to be the least intrusive that I could be. And with our catwalk, we have a temporary catwalk now that's going over that marsh. So I'm thinking that when they put that in is when I will do this also, so that it can just be all one intrusion into the salt marsh, twice a year. And what I will do is continue what I'm doing. I pull them now because they're cut. So just when I see the little ones, I just pull them. And I mean, I'm 100 pounds and I'm just pulling them right around our path. The other thing that we have done, though, is that we recognize that we possibly contributed to them coming because of the construction of our house. It was, there was no house here. So the runoff was terrible for a while. And even though they did put down the hay bales and everything, but we also did not put gutters on this house. So we are putting gutters on the house now and putting dry wells around it to collect the runoff. And that's in hopes of keeping the salinity in our marsh high enough so that it discourages the Phragmites. And so far they look good, I got to tell you. And the grass is coming back beautifully.
I think in answer to the point that Commissioner Rawls raised is that this is an ongoing process. It's not something that will be completed in the 3-year term of the order of conditions. So Callie, could we make the responsibility to conduct periodic management of the Phragmites an ongoing condition that would survive the 3-year termination date?
I think if it was just cutting and, just pulling up the tiny little ones as they sprout up, so there's not really a massive destabilization that's occurring, is fine. I told Ms. Keating on the phone yesterday that the application of any sort of chemical treatment, which she was opposed to, really needs to be done by a licensed professional, especially for using herbicide that's rated for wetland areas. So that needs to happen by a professional, but she instructed me that she just wants to do some cutting of the frag to prevent it from coming back. It is going to be an ongoing process to do that. I've only seen some success with removal of frag for when a chemical treatment is used, but she does not want to do that. So I think we could craft a special condition and add it to the original order that would allow for that very simple cutting and application of some salted water.
And I definitely don't want to do the poison because we have the oyster farm right out, in our pond. I don't know, but I just I wouldn't dare to mess with that, given that that's a food source out there.
So is it, oh, sorry, Dee Dee, go ahead.
Just a comment on that, which is, can we restrict that then to the current property owner? Because who knows, should the property be sold at some point, who knows what a new property owner might, how they might interpret that.
Sure, I can.
We could do something that says that if the property changes hands, if ownership changes, the new owner would have to come back to the commission to continue that process. That makes sense.
Hopefully that won't be until if ever, my great grandkids.
And you'll teach them how to do it properly.
Absolutely. I have a degree in geology. I respect nature a lot. I love it. That's why we love where we are here. So I absolutely want to protect my conservation area. That was what I thought I was doing. I thought I was doing a good thing.
Well, you are, you just have to follow the right process so that there's no inadvertent damage as a result of a good intention.
So just to summarize then, I will write a letter to Mrs. Keating just to document sort of what I've talked to her about, what I've talked to you about, which is that she performed the work without a permit, and that she did the work in a wetland resource area. I'll send that letter to her. And also at the next work session, I will draft a finding and a special condition, probably like 1 or 2, to add to the original order that then you guys will review and vote on.
Okay.
This is Joe. Can I make a suggestion as well?
Sure, go ahead.
Mrs. Keating, I think it might be very important for you to sort of document the process. So maybe at the end of each growing season, take a couple of photos out there just to sort of show us what you've done and how it's responding. I mean, we're sort of going into new area here, and it'd be very interesting for us to learn from what you're doing.
I would be delighted to share that information. In fact, I wanted to show pictures today of what it's come back as, but I don't have the video, so I wasn't going to do that. But you know, to that point, though, I mean, could I add something more? That I am concerned about these Phragmites. If you all have been out on the water, they really, really are becoming a problem. They're everywhere, and they completely crowd out all native flora and fauna habitat. And they collect trash. You wouldn't believe the amount of trash that was stuck in those Phragmites. How does one, I remember from the last meeting that you all were talking about educating, because I'm a victim of that. I didn't realize that I needed a permit to remove invasives from my property. But can we also maybe educate people on when they have a problem? Because, you know, I see them cropping up and I just want to go tell people they need to get on it right away before it gets out of hand. Like those oyster pond condos, which are that's where our problem stems from.
That's a great suggestion, Mrs. Keating. It's a timely suggestion. The commission is currently working on developing some public and community education materials, some brochures, so that people understand what is in the resource areas that we are protecting and what the process is. So maybe something that has an actual focus on the growing problem, no pun intended, of Phragmites migration is something that the town should understand a little bit better than they do. So it's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing that I just forgot to mention? And Mrs. Keating, I can follow up with you after this hearing. Is it possible for you to just write up a little sort of paragraph or 2 on how you want to handle the Phragmites on your property and how you propose to sort of handle it in the future? And also some language about the photographs that Commissioner Kitts mentioned. We can work on that together if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Keating.
Thank you all.
Thanks. All right, Callie.
All right, so the next item on the agenda, going back up to new notices of intent. 46 Little Beach Road, Crimson Peak LLC is the owner, Morris Island Nominee Trust is the applicant, SE 10-3420, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and septic system, construction of a new dwelling, meeting FEMA NFIP standards, installation of new septic system at 46 Little Beach Road, Assessor's Map 16A, parcel H44.
Do you want to read the next 2 and we can have this conversation, both zooming in on each one and zooming out a bit to look at it more holistically?
Sure. 47 Little Beach Road, Crimson Peak LLC is the owner. Morris Island Nominee Trust is the applicant. SE 10-3421, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and septic system, construction of new dwelling, meeting FEMA NFIP standards, installation of new septic system at 46 Little Beach Road, Assessor's Map 16A, parcel H50. Little Beach and 53 Little Beach Road. Crimson Peak LLC is the owner. Morris Island Nominee Trust is the applicant. SC 10-3419, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and septic system, construction of new dwelling meeting NFIP standards, installation of new septic system at 53 Little Beach Road, Assessors Map 16A, parcel H52.
Thank you, Callie.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Bill Riley on behalf of Crimson Peak and Morris Island Nominee Trust on all three matters. The Poresky family has owned these three buildings for a long time, and they've decided, as they watch other buildings get elevated out of the floodplain, that they would like to upgrade the properties as well. They also took note of the fact that the zoning prohibition against expansion of footprints in the floodplain was removed in the rewrite of the bylaw deliberately, so that it allows some lateral expansion of the structures, which is what we propose. We have Jen Crawford is our plant specialist, and Thad Eldridge is our engineer. So I would ask Thad to go through, with your permission, an explanation of 46, 47, and 53, and then we can start, since they're all essentially identical,
Right.
then we can discuss questions on each of them.
Okay.
For the record,
Thad?
Thad Eldridge, East Southeast. Would it be a problem if I were to broadcast my screen?
No, you should, especially if you have things to share.
Thad, can we just, can you do that now, and I can just make sure it comes up okay on our end?
Yeah.
Yep, we can see the Teams app in front there.
Okay.
Great. Can
Okay.
everybody see that?
Yep.
So we have an aerial view here with 46 to the north, 47 to the east, and 53 to the south. There is an isolated wetland located to the west of everything. The coastal dune is southeast of the property. We'll see how quickly this goes. The elevations across the property are somewhat low. We get up into the 10s. The water elevation during a flood, this is elevation 13 coming in, and every building is within the flood zone currently. So the first proposal is to elevate those structures so that we're FEMA compliant. And overall, we're looking to better each property. We'll give that a moment to buffer through. So the proposal with 46 is to elevate the structure. We are pulling a little bit away from the vegetated wetland. Underneath the building, we are taking advantage of the space and putting in a garage. That will be a prime location for refuse, the equipment that can be stored within. We're proposing a deck located to the east of the property away from the wetland. There'll be a new Title V septic system that better meets the requirements. And there will be mitigation that is equivalent to the 2-to-1 requirements. Looking at 47, this was a bit more difficult of a lot because 47 is extremely small. The current building actually exists over the property line. We're pulling it back onto the property, just barely. We're choosing to mitigate in front of the property because there's really no room on the other sides. That's where the septic system currently exists, but we're going to put an easement on the 53 lot for that septic system so that it's in the best location possible. With 53, this is the largest lot. This does go out to the water. Again, proposing to elevate the garage underneath, the septic system that is higher, therefore better. This mitigation is coming in the form of a land management plan. It's removal of black pine and knotweed. And then going back into the middle, we are shifting the driveway in the way, but over as far as we can away from that BVW. That will all be pervious surface, and all the grading is established to keep the water away from the wetland. As mentioned, the numbers, we're reducing lawn and reducing non-native invasives in order to make up for the slight increases in coverage. FEMA compliant foundations, which is a bit better than the current foundations that exist today. The decks would be open and as pervious as open decks can be. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Thad, for that overview. Before we go any further, there's something I do need to mention and neglected to do at the top. The commission, the Conservation Division received an email from an abutter who was requesting a continuance with respect to number 53. Apparently, and it's not clear to me exactly what the issue is.
Can you hold on 1 second? Sorry to interrupt. Thad, can you stop control of the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Janet, go ahead.
It's okay. One of the members, I believe, of the trust that owns an abutting parcel is concerned about number 53 and didn't receive from the assessor's office the appropriate notification. Kermit Eaton is his name, and my first question is whether Mr. Eaton is on the line here today. Okay, no. I was going to say that.
This is Kermit Eaton.
Hello, Mr. Eaton. I just wanted to say it would be very difficult for us to continue one of these three since they really need to be looked at as a unified whole. But I also want to let you know that you will have time to conduct your review. We will be having at least one more hearing on this on June the 24th, probably. So you have time to do your review and come back and ask your questions, and we'll give you that opportunity, if that's agreeable.
If I may, I've had conversations with Mr. Eaton.
Oh, okay.
He was notified of 46 and 47, 46, 47, and 53. Notification went to Janet Dugan, who's the listed owner of the property owned in common with Mr. Eaton. Technically, it's her responsibility to notify the other owners when she's notified of a meeting like this. The entire question is moot because he does have the notice and he did have it in a timely manner, whether it was delivered to him or not.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's not that he's agreeable and it's not an issue, and he has adequate opportunity to review and ask questions.
Additionally, he was sent hard copies of the plan weeks or months ago. It was quite some time ago.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eaton. Thank you, Thad.
Let me just make a comment. It was an oversight, a clerical oversight, while Mrs. Dugan was changed to the person to be notified. I, in the past, have always been the first person to notify. I've talked to the Conservation Commission about that and the Assessor's Office about that. They have apologized and corrected that oversight. I have absolutely no problem if this is going to be continued to continue the process. So
Okay.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, Bill Riley.
Yes.
I just want to, I mailed Kermit plans when he called me several weeks ago. So, with all due respect to Kermit, he's had a lot of notice.
Okay. Yep. Be that as it may, part of the reason I was
let me say this. Look, I don't want. Excuse me. I don't want to get into it.
Please stop for a moment. The reason
Okay.
I'm saying that you have even more time than however much time you've had up until this point, and that's not relevant at the moment, is because it's in the commission's interest to request an on-site visit because of the complexity of these three properties and how they relate to one another and their location with respect to the surrounding resource areas. So that's why I'm saying no matter what, this matter will end up being continued to June 24th at least. And hopefully between now and then, we can arrange for an on-site visit for the commission members, and then we'll regroup on June 24th. So I'm going to ask Thad and Bill Riley now if they would be amenable to making a plan for an on-site visit in complete compliance with all COVID requirements, et cetera, et cetera.
Madam Chair, Bill Riley, of course, we're happy to accommodate the commission for an on-site. And I presume that I would work with Callie, or Thad would work with Callie to get a good date for everyone. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes,
that makes sense.
Dee Dee?
Yeah, I would also have some questions regarding the mitigation.
Yeah, oh yeah, we have questions. I think we can try and go as far as we can today.
Well,
with
I
the-
meant on the onsite.
Yeah,
Oh.
well, that will answer, right. Oh, right, so Jen should be there as well. That's where you're going. Yes. Yes.
All right, yeah, Jen is on the phone today, so she knows that. She'll be there.
Yeah. So between Jen, Thad, and Callie, arrange a date.
Right.
Gotcha. Is everybody okay with that as an approach?
Madam Chair, this is Kermit Eaton. Would I be notified of when that date would be that you would make an on-site review?
We don't normally do that. It's an accommodation for the members of the commission to visit the property and have the staking explained, have the locations of the resource areas explained, so that we can see it. I assume that you're already familiar with the properties and don't really see the necessity for you to be there. We would not be answering any questions or dealing with anybody.
Okay. That's fine. Thank
That
you.
will be done in hearings, at open hearings. Okay.
I'm
And
fine.
with that,
Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. With that, as I was starting to say, we can dive into this today and get started with our review and see how far we can move it along, reserving questions that would need to be answered at an on-site. So I'll open that up to questions from the commission at this point.
Janet, do you want to move? Would it be easier for the commission to move site by site? So do 47 first, 53 and 46. So do it like that, or are you going to take a more cumulative approach?
I think we're going to need to go both ways, but let's start with the individual properties, starting with number 46, and then ending with going up for a higher level view of the whole. So on 46, questions.
This is Commissioner Clark.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
In light of the very complex environmental and technical issues involved with the three sites, I would like to encourage my fellow commissioners to request the two of the checklists that are provided as part of the 2017 guidance on coastal resources by the state. One of them relates to land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the other is for coastal dunes. I think those checklists are very helpful in providing the type of overview and technical information and about the nature of the environment and so on that would be very helpful to the commission in reaching a conclusion about these three development projects.
Okay. Everybody is familiar with that guidance document, that manual. So we should. I did.
Riley, what was the reference again?
It's a 27. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janet. My apologies.
That's okay. I assume that it's this one, Tom.
I
applying.
don't have a visual. I'm gonna, hopefully,
It's the DEP applying the Massachusetts Coastal Wetlands Regulations, a practical manual for conservation commissions
yes,
to protect
that's it.
storm damage prevention and flood control functions in coastal resource areas. A copy of this is in the Dropbox for the commission members to access under the resources tab in that folder. And it does have helpful checklists and information in it when we're reviewing coastal projects.
Yes, if I may note that the checklists actually are found online at a different URL, and why they posted it that way, I don't know. But I have that information for anybody who wants it, or I will, after this hearing,
Okay.
be happy to send out an email to everybody with the appropriate URLs for the document and for the checklist.
Okay, if you would do that. I think they are already in the Dropbox, but I would have to check and to be 100% sure. But those forms are.
That'd be, pardon me, Bill Riley, that'd be greatly appreciated, Tom, for those of us antiques who aren't that familiar with moving around inside computers.
Okay.
Happy to do anything I can do to help improve the information on this site.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so back to number 46. I have a question to start off with, Thad, and it has to do with the retaining wall that currently exists along Little Beach Road.
Yes.
Or Seagull Road. So they all three of these properties have these retaining walls. On 46, was it constructed in order to build the existing septic system?
So the retaining wall was installed to construct the current septic system. The proposed septic system will be even higher. And
Okay.
the retaining wall is going to be augmented to accommodate that.
Okay, that's what I was going with, that is why the need for the increase from 8.7 to 10 feet? So it's to accommodate the elevated septic system.
Yes, and that's to increase the separation to groundwater. So it's right in line with your groundwater protection.
Mm-hmm. Is it going to, so can you address, there's going to be a fair amount of regrading at this to accommodate all of this?
There will be a little bit of fill brought in over the septic system.
Mm-hmm.
We're going up to elevation 12, where it's around elevation 10 now. There will be regrading where the house currently exists, because you take out a house, you have to put dirt back, and then but it's just remedying what's currently there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a few questions if.
Yeah, go ahead, Callie, while I'm trying to figure out my list here. Go ahead.
Okay. So quick question, Thad, has the Board of Health reviewed this, or was there a review from Judy?
We are ready to submit these to the Board of Health. I wanted the first comments from the commission before I sent them in.
Okay, great. And I was just wondering about the dewatering areas. I know, Thad, that you and I have done some pre-construction meetings in the Little Beach area, and that's something that came up, is the location of the dewatering area. I was just wondering, I read everything, I looked at the plans, and I was just wondering for 46 Little Beach, is there a designated area for dewatering? Is that this area here? So you'll dewater in this area?
I'm sorry. Yes, if they rip up the current septic or use the current septic for dewatering, and then when they remediate that, pulling everything out, they can take out any silts that make their way through and then put in the new septic.
So it's sort of the pit, for lack of a better term, would sort of be used for both the septic, the removal of the septic, the dewatering, and then the installation of the new septic?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're hopeful. I mean, with the With the last project that we did, there was no need to de-water. They just timed it at the right time so that the hole was dry when they poured the footings.
Yeah, that seemed to work well when they did the construction at, was it 3 Scallop Terrace?
3 Scallop Terrace, yes.
And then 2 other things that I have for 46. I was just wondering, so you're definitely requesting a variance from the commission, and you provided an alternatives analysis. And I was just wondering if you could revise your alternatives analysis to speak less about sort of the aesthetics of the dwelling and more about the protection of the resource areas. So I have pulled up a section, I'll pull up a section now of our what's required under our current regulations for alternatives analyses. Just give me a second while I show that. So it gives guidelines on the scope of an alternative analysis to be considered, and it provides details for what should be included. And I was just wondering if there's a possibility actually for all 3 properties to revise the alternatives analysis according to these bullet points here.
Sure.
And I can go ahead and send this to you for your reference.
Oh, no, I have a copy of it.
Okay. And then this may come up later, but I just wanted to double check about the ratio of mitigation for 46 Little Beach. So I'll defer to the commission because I would imagine you guys have questions about the mitigation planting. So I'll sort of hold off on that question.
Okay. Thad, at the end of construction, what will the elevation of the new structure be?
We're proposing those structures, the first floor will be elevation 15, where 14 is required for flood compliance.
Okay.
Building code compliance, but there have been so many projects where they've met the bare minimum and then the floodplain changes and they're no longer in compliance. We're hopefully staying ahead of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, okay.
And FEMA guidelines are really, the higher the better.
Yep. And so in the foundation that's going to be installed on each of these, are they there? So you're installing flood vents? What is the nature of how is the construction of the foundations going to be conducted? Are they poured?
Poured concrete with flood vents on at least 2 sides in compliance with the FEMA documentation. So in 46, there will be a flood vent at the southerly corner. The garage doors could have flood vents built into them. And if required by the building department, we could put flood vents on the north side, even though they wouldn't really be used until the floods made it up to elevation 10.5.
Okay. Are there going to be gutters installed and downspouts installed on these structures?
We were proposing just to have everything splashed to the ground.
Okay.
But whatever policy the commission wants to have regarding those, we're happy to go to gutters and downspouts and driveway.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just trying to understand what exactly what the nature of the proposal is before we start asking for changes to it. I noted on number 46, the proposal in the performance standards says that the proposal will decrease the pervious area by 300 feet. And I think that was meant to say the impervious. The chart on the site plan shows 300 feet decrease across. I actually had to print this just to try to see it, but it's not helping see it. So the 300-foot decrease, square foot decrease is in the impervious, correct?
Yeah, Janet, I saw that too and wondered if there is a typo, and I'm trying to bring it up here.
Yeah, just pull, yeah,
I've got it here, so I'll
Okay.
project it.
yep. There it is.
Right, we are decreasing the pervious hardscape by about 300 square feet.
I thought you were decreasing the impervious hardscape by 300 feet.
Okay.
If I add up the impervious hardscapes across all three of the resource areas on the conservation chart, I think it comes to about 300.
Okay, we can change that.
Yeah.
Impervious versus pervious.
I mean, it's part of part of our analysis is a decrease in the impervious and an expansion of perviousness, so that to accelerate absorption. Okay, before I get on to mitigation, I want to ask if other people have. Yeah, Callie, go ahead. Oh, there it
Sorry,
is.
Janet, is this what you're speaking about in regards to the decrease in pervious?
If you look at the three areas for impervious under the NDZ, the outer aura, and the land subject, and you look at 120 decrease, 30 decrease, and 150 decrease, that's a 300 square foot decrease in impervious.
You're absolutely correct. We'll get impervious in there.
And I don't know what the net is once you analyze the numbers on the pervious, but a 300 square foot decrease in impervious has my attention. Before I ask any questions I have about mitigation, I want to open it up to other commission members who have any questions about the
Yeah, Commissioner Holt,
structure. Go ahead.
Thad, what's the elevation of the deck?
The deck would be right at first floor or one step down.
So about 13?
We'd be looking at about 14.3, 14.5.
Okay, and what's underneath it?
And that would be built on sonotubes.
Okay. Okay, so above grade, how high above grade is it?
Over on the east, that's going to be, or northeast, that'll be a couple feet above grade.
Okay.
Once you get all of your structure underneath of it, it'll be pretty close because we're at elevation 12.
Okay, so then that will still allow any stormwater to percolate back down through the soils.
Oh, certainly.
Is it gravel underneath the deck or sand or?
Yes, we can put gravel underneath of it.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Dee Dee.
Okay. But you said the area under the dwelling is going to be concrete, correct?
Correct.
So that will not allow any stormwaters to percolate back down through the soils.
Correct.
So we're actually then, aren't we increasing the amount or decreasing the ability for the property to absorb stormwaters or floodwaters?
Another way to look at it, when you consider the amount of void in soil, you're looking at 40%. When you consider the void in a garage, you're talking, 100% minus whatever storage items are in there. So there's substantially more volume within, seasonally, it would be a fairly empty garage, especially in the off season. And there's more storage capacity in that garage than there would be in the soil.
Oh, because I recall in past projects, what's been done is in some area in the concrete flooring, there's been like a trench that was just filled with gravel or stones that would allow the water, to percolate back down. But in other words, to try to provide some permeability in the concrete flooring. But you're saying that's not necessary.
Well, Dee Bill Riley, if we have a problem with groundwater down there, a drain like that would allow groundwater to enter the structure. We're going to have flood vents so that whatever water goes into the garage is going to go back out again. So,
okay.
I think there'll be plenty of ways for the water to get back into the ground without having to worry about it coming up through the trench.
Okay. Thank you. The green area around the dwelling, that's just basically Cape Cod lawn?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And oh, the AC units, they're showing as being in the no disturb zone. Is there any reason they just can't be moved to the other side of the dwelling to just get them out of the NDZ? I believe they're in the NDZ.
They are. They're also elevated. Those have to meet the same requirements as the building. So we need those AC units and generator up at elevation 14, or at least 4 feet above the ground.
Is it possible, is Dee Dee your point, is it possible if people are looking at the screen to move the AC units and their elevated position to this side?
Yeah, anywhere along there, just get him, again, it's to improve the no disturb zone, which is disturbed, I know, but
Is there a reason, Thad, that you put them there? Is it not appropriate to put them on the other side of the line, or?
Well, Bill Riley, I mean, the idea is that the deck is recreation space for the residents, and they just wanted to keep the air conditioning units as far away from that space as they could, for just so the noise won't disturb people out on the deck. That's all.
Okay, something I guess.
We'll be happy to discuss the location with the owner, and we can talk about it, at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
And it looks as though this entire property is going to be regraded. Is that right? There's a lot of regrading even on the west side?
I mean, the west side, that's, do you mean the southwest side?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in order to, we're really looking to balance out, because we're not allowed to bring fill into a floodplain.
So what will that do to the direction of flood? It looks like it will be flowing towards the wetland.
Yeah.
It currently flows towards the wetland with a long slope. We're actually cutting some of that away, and so some of the water that makes it over the lawn will be directed towards the driveway and back out towards Little Beach Road and the drainage system there.
Okay, and then I suppose the purpose of increasing the buffer would be to absorb some of that water.
Yes. And it's also in line with the mitigation policy for the vegetated buffer strip to be placed adjacent to the resource itself.
Okay, everything else I had on this property had to do with the plantings.
I have a question that I forgot to address. Back to the question about the increased height in the retaining wall. Is that going to be accomplished through removal of the existing old concrete wall, or pouring on top of it?
I'd like to say that we could pour on top of it, but some of that wall is cracked, and we need a structural to review it to see if we can reuse it or if we have to re-pour.
So that's to be not yet
that's
determined.
really that's really close to that road.
Yeah,
And I don't see grading down working. Would it be possible to remove part of it? I don't even think so, because we're up so high and to get down so low. Even
Right.
if we were to trim off some of the slope behind the building, that's still a big drop that we'll have to deal with.
right.
And it
But-
is of note, I mean, Seagull, and we've had this in other applications before, Seagull Road is a 10-foot wide layout with a 20-foot wide road.
Mhm.
So there's a significant portion of the road that's on the subject property.
So are you going to get an engineering analysis to help in the decision-making about what to do with that?
Yeah, we'd like to leave it open now that if we can reuse it, we will, but we're expecting to have to replace at least part of it.
Okay.
And
Okay,
if we
cool.
don't have to replace any part of it, then all the better. Just like the dewatering question, we want to be ready to dewater, but we're not anticipating it.
Okay, got it. Other questions from other commissioners? 46. And we can start addressing the mitigation on 46 as well, if you'd like. Is Jen?
Janet, I have a question.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
On that wall that we're talking about that encompasses the septic system, how tall is that retaining wall going to be?
It's got to be another 1.5 feet higher than it is now. We're
About 10
about
feet.
About 10
Oh,
feet?
do you mean the exposed face, or do you mean the?
Yes, the exposed face of it, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be up another 1.5 feet, and you're up at 4 feet in some areas now.
Now, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Are there any plans to plant in front of it?
So it already sticks out like a sore thumb. That's just a difficulty with being in the floodplain with a septic system. We didn't have any specific plans to hide it, and I mean, hiding it on the southerly side, I mean, no problem. That's just facing their own property. Hiding it on the northerly side, you're going to start to get vegetation closer to that road. And I mean, this road is heavily used. You have the marina down the way that's going in and out of there all the time. It's just a little tight to get a significant vegetation in front of it.
Thad, is it possible? I know there's a property further up the street that has some grasses, some native grasses planted for the lawn area. Is it possible to ask your client if they would consider planting sort of kind of like a conservation mix or something in front of the wall?
Callie, this is Bill Riley. We'll ask our client and be able to get back to you shortly, I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a question that I have as well, that hopefully if during an onsite, we can address, if your client is willing, which is doing more of the kinds of grass plantings and naturalization of some of these turf lawn areas. I know it's proposed for number 37, but it's not really proposed for 46 or 53. And I'd like to know more about whether or not that would be a possibility that they'd be open to.
Yeah,
Even some, evergreen plantings where there's more room, maybe some juniper or cedar, or, red cedar or something. It's something that doesn't get too big in a kind of a dwarf form, because I think they'll appreciate it long term if there's something there that's going to be covering that wall.
Bill Riley, yeah, we'll discuss all that with the property owner and be able to respond at the onsite most likely.
Okay. I have a question about the proposed mitigation. So the proposal is to treat and remove all invasives, likely invasives, and non-native plant species from the property. So my question is, does that include the portion of the isolated wetland that is on site? And how would you propose to do that, to work in the wetland and only a portion of the wetland and leaving the rest of it?
Yep, this is Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management. Can you
Hi,
hear me
Jen.
okay?
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the answer is yes, we would propose to manage those species in the portion of the wetland that is on the property, and you'll see on the plan that that property line goes through, goes through the wetland where it's supposed to. Really, in the majority of the wetland on the property, and I do recognize that my my labels and my hatches and my legend are flip-flopped, but when you're looking at the plan, the little almost like grass symbol where it says low wetland vegetation, really the only thing that's in there is purple loosestrife, and there, which is very easy to manage. There are more invasive species around the edge of the wetland in that kind of mixed shrub border. There's everything from, shrub honeysuckle and bittersweet, but it's also mixed in with baccharis and a bunch of Rosa palustris, swamp rose, and some good things in there. So it should be pretty easy to just go through those areas and clip and drip anything that doesn't belong, so to speak.
Okay, and there's also a reference to using the native seed mix, and is that going to be applied in the wetland itself as well when the loosestrife and the other invasives are taken out?
It would not get applied towards the center of the wetland where the loosestrife is, because honestly, that area is very well vegetated. I mean, we can throw seed in there if you want, but there's
No, right. Right.
Yeah, there's really, the loosestrife isn't in large swaths that are going to result in large bare areas. It's growing in and amongst native wetland rush and reed and sedge vegetation. So in the center of the wetland, you actually hardly won't even notice a difference, other than it won't have purple flowers from the loosestrife. The shrub border that area is a little bit more upland, a little bit drier, and so absolutely any areas that might open up would be seeded. But I think there's still going to be a fairly consistent shrub vegetated border there, even after we remove the invasives that are growing among it.
Okay. Other questions on the mitigation proposed for number 46, commissioners?
Commissioner, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's Bob Rawls. Let me pull my notes up. Actually, I don't. My question applies to all three projects in that there's a mitigation plan for 46, and there's a land management plan that refers to a mitigation plan in 47, but I don't see a mitigation plan. And there is a mitigation plan for 53, even though the land management plan doesn't reference it. So, I think we have, on the face that we're missing two mitigation plans, unless there's a reason why.
No, you should not be. There is a mitigation plan for each property, as well as a land management plan for each property, as well as mitigation plan images for each property.
Okay. We don't have them for 47 and 53.
And I don't have it for 46.
Huh.
Yeah, as far as I know, all of those documents were submitted with the original notice of intent through Eldridge. So maybe they got mixed in, maybe they're in with another filing, but they were all completed at the same time and submitted at the same time, to my knowledge. So if you don't have them, obviously we will need to get them to you.
Yeah, I'm going through the scan, and I have 46, 47, and 53. I have have these in here, but we can certainly get additional copies as needed.
So this, I'm just quickly looking through. We have it for 46. That's on the Dropbox. That's what I was just showing.
Right.
And for 47, Commissioner Rawls is correct. I have the existing conditions and post conditions plan and the site plan and the land management plan, but I don't have the planting plan in that PDF that you guys sent me. And then for 53, I'm just pulling that up now. I do have the, I have the site plan, the existing conditions plan, the post conditions plan, the land management plan, and also we do not have the planting plan in that PDF from you guys.
Right.
Okay.
So can you send along the planting plan for 47 and 53 digitally?
Yeah, either that or I can send them.
Yeah, we'll get those in today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Bob, other questions?
And then my only other, maybe after we see those plans, my questions really have to do with, I think maybe you already alluded to this before, which is the lawn, the nature of the lawn.
Yep.
What part of it is going to be native, the part's going to be mowed, and so forth. I think that's,
Yep.
It's not clear to me in the materials we have right now how that's going to be.
Right. Agreed. Other questions?
Commissioner Holt has a couple.
Yes, go ahead, Dee.
Jen, for the loosestrife, did you consider the loosestrife beetle? I think it's a Galaricella or something, or are the populations not such that that method of eradication would work?
I'm sorry, Dee Dee, could you say the first part of your question one more time?
Did you consider using the loosestrife beetle? That, you know, just as a way to eliminate loosestrife. I think it's called Galaricella or something like that. We proposed it on another property. I don't know if it was ever implemented. This was several years ago. Or are the populations of the loose such that it wouldn't be effective?
Honestly, I don't have experience using that type of biological control. But what I can say is regarding the populations of loosestrife, based on what I observed when we started this project last fall, I think that the loosestrife is pretty, I don't think that there's that much of it in there. I think it should be pretty easy to get under control. But if you guys have had another project where they've used loosestrife beetle, I would be very, very interested in any information or data that you have on that from another project.
Okay, again, it was approved by the commission. I don't know if the applicant ever used it, but we can find out. In the document, it mentions spraying. There's a reference to spraying an herbicide in such a manner that it will not get on any of the native plants. Is that your intention to spray?
I think the loosestrife could easily be clipped and dripped. It might even be able to be pulled if it's in very small quantities. I wouldn't want to unnecessarily disturb any soils within the wetland, but it's something that we could definitely try because, again, I don't think that there was that much of it, if my memory serves me correctly.
Oh, you're talking about the beetle?
No, the loosestrife. You had asked about the herbicide, right?
Yes, there's a reference to spraying, not just clip and drip, as you said.
Right. So, well, usually when we use a selective foliar application, it's typically more in maintenance than in anything. When things come in from seed bank and they're very small and they're unable to be clipped and dripped. But otherwise, it's usually a selective application. So you are, you're only targeting certain species. You're not broadcast spraying for everything, so to speak.
But you are spraying?
it would be, we would intend that that could be a method that we would use when it is site appropriate.
Is it your opinion that it is site appropriate for this application?
Possibly in the maintenance end of things, depending, I wouldn't say for the loose stripe, but in that shrub border, it really depends how large of areas become opened up due to invasive removal. Because obviously if the areas are very small or they're very polka dotted, there wouldn't be any need to spray or any reason to, because we could simply either clip and drip or we could even hand weed stuff. It just kind of depends on how it comes back, to be honest with you.
Because generally,
Yeah.
I can't recall when recently spraying has been a part of a permit. So unless we...
Selective foliar, you mean selective foliar application?
Yeah, I didn't think it was a spray, that it was a wipe kind of a way to administer the herbicide.
It definitely can be a wipe. I would say typically when you see language that says, selective foliar application, if it doesn't specify wipe, I would assume that on your end, when you're reading land management plans, if it doesn't specify that it's a wipe application or a swipe, that it would be sprayed. But if you're more comfortable with this area in particular and there being no spray foliar selective applications, that they be wipe applications, that's fine. I don't think honestly, I don't have any reason why that couldn't be, why that technique wouldn't be successful here in the small quantities that things are occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Another question, on site, I saw the stakes for the mitigation area on the upland side. Were the stakes also down in the wetland, showing how far down the property line is?
We had stakes at the property line. The nail out in the street should have stayed there just fine with spraying. I know that the nail at the other end of the property was in a puddle, so we couldn't really spray that one. But we did not stake anything else in the wetland itself. It was just the limits of that restoration area.
But isn't the limit of the restoration area the property line?
And we did have stakes at the property line, on the westerly property line. We didn't stake through the wetland, though.
Where
So
were
there's
the
nothing
stakes?
going on in the wetland beyond, I'm sorry, go ahead. I think what she's getting to is that there's nothing happening beyond the mitigation area, the new vegetated strip along the wetland. But Jen just said that she was going to be taking loose stripe out of the wetland itself. So there will be work going on within the wetland, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
and in
that's what
accordance-
our plan. Yeah,
Yeah,
In
so I was
accordance
just,
with the staking requirements, we did stake the property corners. There's a nail with paint in seagull, and there's a white stake located in the brush at the south end along the
yeah,
lane.
I was just when I was there trying to get a visual of looking from the property down into the wetland, how far down, where is the property line? And because I couldn't see what your markings were on the streets, I couldn't tell how far into the wetland the mitigation or the invasive removal was going to take place. Is there a
We
way
can
to
add a couple
mark
stakes
that?
at the edge of the wetland. I don't like to stake in a wetland if I can help it.
Yeah, and I get it. Okay.
Perhaps it's something that we can talk
If you
about
want
on
to-
site.
Yeah. Try to figure out where that is. Because most of the wetland is on the neighboring property.
Spend too much time trying to protect these areas.
Let's see. And was there a timeline and stuff with? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Okay. That was all I had at the moment. So we'll talk about that when we're at the onsite.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, I have a question and then on number 47. So Am I correct in assuming that is the retaining wall going to be removed? It looks like it when I compare the existing and the post.
Yes. Yes, this one, because the retaining wall is for the septic system and we're now putting the septic system on 53, we're able to remove that retaining wall.
Okay, well, this seems like a good spot to ask a question that seems sort of obvious when I look at this, considering all of these lots are small, and in particular 47. Did the owner give any thought to constructing a shared septic system as opposed to 3 separate systems?
We did review it, but you do realize there's a substantial cost jump when you go to a shared septic system.
Sorry, I'm going to profess my ignorance. It would seem to me the other way. If you're going to construct, why would it be, anyway, no, I don't know that it's significantly different in price.
One of the requirements of a shared septic system, sorry, things were full psyche. One of the requirements of a shared septic system is establishing an escrow for the replacement of that system equivalent to over 100% the value of the system. So you're immediately more than doubling your cost. The shared septic system documents that have to be created by an attorney are very robust, and there's a lot of work that goes into creating a shared septic system.
Okay.
Now, although we were considering the possibility of doing a condominium, in which case we could combine 47 and 53 septic systems without the necessity for the shared septic system administrative process.
If you condominiumized 47 and 53?
Yeah, we create a 2-unit. It's something we discussed. No decision. Excuse me. No decision has been made yet.
Okay, but that approach, this is new to me, but that approach would get you out from under the burdens of the otherwise doing the shared septic system.
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
And if I may, we've also designed these to use gravity rather than a pump. Pumps have a bad habit of failing, especially with salt water intrusion.
Yeah. Okay. I have other questions, but they relate to the absence of a mitigation plan on 47. So I'm going to move on to my questions to 53. So Thad, I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead, Callie. You have 40 questions on 47.
Yeah, do other members of the commission have questions for 47?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the things I was just wondering about is the way that is shown on the plan to the east side of 46.
Yeah.
Who is that jointly owned? What is that? Who is responsible for the activity on the way?
Okay. Do you mean the way that goes in the middle of all the properties?
The path that's currently done as a pathway to the dune, basically.
Okay, so to the east of 47,
Right.
That was a way that was established as a means to the water. And just to share, Morris Island Road used to go through here. This was the way to Morris Island Road. They now have a 20-foot way there that contains the path, which is of benefit to everyone in the neighborhood to get out to the water. They had reserved a 13-foot strip for a future way, and we are proposing deck and stairs within that, with the risk that should they ever improve this to be a formal road going out to the water, they will have to remove that. But getting the approval to have a formal way, anything more than a 4-foot wide path that they currently have is slim to none.
So, who's responsible for maintaining whatever is planted there or any other activity in the way? Is it what entity controls the way? I don't know how else to ask the question because I don't understand.
I mean, it's a private way that a number of people have rights in. Under derelict fee, half the ownership would be under the applicant, and the other half would be under Mr. Eaton and company. But responsibility?
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I think Thad's wrong about the ownership.
Oh, my mistake.
Right. We have a derelict fee statute. So when ways are created on a plan, the adjoining property owners go to the middle line of the property. So the Eaton property, which is on the other side of the way, would own to the middle line, own the fee to the middle line, subject to the rights of all persons to use it. And then when we'd have our interest in the reserved future way.
Oh, thank you. So within that way, there is a 4-foot path that the residents use. Is that right?
That's our understanding. I don't know. I don't know who has legal rights to use it. In general, it's used by everybody.
Okay.
And it's also more of just it's like a little footpath that goes through like some native grass areas and then into the dune. It's not, it's probably, you'll see it at the onsite, but it's like maybe 18 inches wide at the most. It's just a little footpath that goes through there.
Yeah, I saw it. I was just wondering, because I think some mitigation was going on over in that area. Anyway,
yeah,
okay.
There's a little like a couple invasive shrub honeysuckle that go just into the way, and the footpath kind of skirts around them at the beginning that we were going to manage and replace. You'll see them at the onsite.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed it on the post conditions. There's a reference to the land management plan encompassing part of the way.
Yep.
And just one question again about the deck. That the elevation of the deck is what? How many feet above grade and total elevation?
I mean, when you get out to the edge, that's 10 feet above grade.
Okay, and underneath the deck?
Underneath of that can be gravel, just as with 46.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, there is on the plan. Which one? There was a line that is usually designates, I thought, a top of a coastal bank. It's a straight line with like little triangles.
Oh, that was a topographical line just showing a change in slope.
Yeah, it's on the, what plan is this? This is the site plan. So,
when we perform topography, we generally locate changes in slope, and that's the line type that comes in. When we designate it as true coastal bank, we will bold that line.
oh, okay. All right, so it really doesn't mean anything other than there's a change in the slope there? Is that?
Correct. And you'll see below that, there's another one that has little triangles going the other way. It's just a little slope that exists there so that when we contour the property, we can use it properly. We usually take those out, but I guess we left that one on.
Okay, thank you. That's what I had. Thank you. Other than questions, mitigation questions.
Other questions, non-mitigation questions on 47? Anybody?
I have some, but I can wait till the end of, I can go after the commissioners.
Okay. Hearing none, go ahead, Callie.
I have a question,
I'm sorry,
Jan.
Bob. I'm always cutting you off. I apologize.
That's okay, sorry. Hey, on the material for the pervious driveway, what is that going to be? Just says pervious driveway.
Stone shell or stone and shell?
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Callie.
Okay, Thad, the same thing for the alternatives analysis for this project.
We
Can
can beef
you-
those up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I saw some missing performance standards for the adjacent upland resource area. Can you just add those in?
Sure.
And two more things for as we're talking about the decks and what's going in under the deck, is there a possibility to add a generic plan note either to the site plan for at least for 46 and 47, stating that there would be gravel placed underneath the deck?
Sure.
And then lastly, I was wondering if you could explain how the project, when I read through your narrative, I just wanted to see if you could explain how the project does not interfere with the landward or lateral movement of the coastal dune.
So currently that coastal dune exists on the other side of the path. And otherwise
So the answer for that explanation would be that given its the distance between the dune and the proposal is enough to prevent some interference with the movement of the dune.
Now, let's go back a little bit here. First off, in 47, there is not a foundation proposed under the entirety of the building. We were able to reduce that. It's a one-car garage, and then there's extra space for stairs to be able to get upstairs. And you'll see a kind of a dotted or sandy line in the middle of the building that represents that. So there's nothing stopping the dune from coming over and expanding underneath the building under the southwest side of that. And there's nothing stopping it from expanding northeast of the building. But otherwise, I mean, when the dune does build to that point in many years, we would, the dune would be able to expand around the building.
And then same for 47, if this sort of dune line started to move more landward or expanded laterally, that potentially, given the elevation of the home being outside of the floodplain, that would potentially give more room for the movement of the dune in many years to come.
Mm-hmm. It would be fine.
Okay.
And I think that you would see that the landward extent of that dune is really going to be cut short by the walking path.
Yeah, it sounds like the walking path might be one of the first areas to be, for lack of a better word, inundated with sand if that happens.
Well, the walking path has been there for 50 or 60 years or longer, since the Horn family developed this property, actually beginning in the 30s. So I think it might be worthwhile talking about 47. Given the fact that in 60 years it hasn't made it across the way, and there's been no dynamic movement as it has been up further to the north by the Beach and Tennis Club. Yeah, I appreciate the concern. I just don't see it as particularly relevant.
Yeah, I was just asking the question.
Yep, it's just the performance standard of not interfering with dune migration, but it seems what we're saying here is that the continuous use of this path over decades is preventing that, and that's not the property, it's just the use of everybody who has a right to walk on it.
Right.
Okay.
So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Now, Thad, on to 53. So My question is on the calculation of the outer aura,
Yeah,
and you have it as the total outer aura is 11,200 square feet, which is roughly half of the property. But when I look at the plan and I say that there's two outer auras, one associated with the dune and the other associated with the BBW, and I look at how those lines run, it would appear to me to be encompass the entire property, or very nearly the entire property. What am I missing?
this entire property goes substantially to the east-southeast.
Hey, did you arrange that?
We have the 50 that comes in from the dune, the 50, so we have about a quarter acre that's right in the middle.
Right, but I'm looking at the 100-foot line, anything that's within that. So the 100-foot line from the BBW is there, and everything to the west of that, and the 100-foot line from the dune is there.
And because of the overlap, it's from the 50-foot line to the 50-foot line for the outer aura.
Okay, I look at those lines and I think between the two of them, they're covering everything. So if the 100-foot line from the BBW, I'm sorry, I apologize for banging on this. So Callie, can you run your cursor along the 100-foot line from the BBW?
From the BBW?
Yeah, that one, yep. So everything to the west of that is within the outer aura, or within the, oh, I see. So you're not counting the 50, outside of the 50, you're just counting 50 to 100. So that strip that's within the NDZ is not, okay, never mind, it's just the way I'm reading your chart. That's why.
Yeah.
So what's outside?
Too many wetlands out.
Sorry?
There's too many wetlands out.
There's a lot. This is all, right, okay. So the wall, the retaining wall on this property is staying as it currently exists? There's no change proposed?
Correct. The proposal was to just leave it.
Okay. Do you know what kind of shape it's in?
That one's in decent shape.
Okay.
It's also not really holding anything back. The existing septic system is behind it, but it's I don't know, it's really just there.
Is it holding the dune back?
I mean,
No,
once
that
the dune gets over to it, it'll be up and over top.
The retaining wall is just holding the grade up around the house.
Okay. And, all right, other questions while I sort through the grading?
Commissioner Holt, I have one or two.
Yes, go ahead, Judy.
Another way question. The driveway comes off, is that technically Little Beach?
Yes,
It's been
O'Reilly,
called
yes.
It-
Yeah, but that's an extension of Little Beach Road.
Okay, and where it ends, just beyond the driveway to 53, what is that? Is that another parcel?
Yeah, it doesn't belong to us.
Okay, no, I'm just,
Yeah, but yes, it's all owned by somebody down there, I can tell you that.
okay, and then on the west side or the northwest side of the way that abuts the BBW, again, that's somebody else's property?
That's correct.
Because
I've actually looked at that. I can't remember who owns it now. Years and years ago, there used to be a ball field where the summer vacationers would play ball.
because you know, in just looking at this, I was thinking that that would be a, you know, from my view, a better mitigation area. But if they don't, you know, against the BVW again, cleaning that up and creating another vegetative buffer strip. But since they don't own that property, I guess that's not possible.
Well, I take that back. I mean, if you looked at look at the plan I'm looking at, which is the site plan for 53. The boundary line for 53 runs along the way, and it comes down and joins an angled line that runs into the BVW, and that's the portion. So everything above the line towards the street is actually owned by 47 above that dashed line.
Oh.
Yeah, so one of the plans I have shows all three properties, and so pardon me, not 47, 46 comes all the way down to that line.
I have to say I've noticed, and Thad, you had it up earlier, that there is an existing plan that encompasses all three properties. Could it be possible to get a copy of that? So I don't have to sit here, have my scissors and try to cut things and put them onto a board so I can try to see these together, which I started to do and said, that's silly.
Thought we had sent that in, but yeah, I'll get that right over.
Great, thank you.
It's a plan, it's just for reference, it's called post conditions, 46, 47, and 53 Little Beach Road.
Okay.
I have just another question on the septic easement. Is that a physical line, or is it just an easement that is for a purpose rather than a physical space, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, what that is drawn is when we do an easement like this, we do a sketch plan that gets recorded with the easement document, and so that sketch plan would follow that dashed line around. So, but no, there's no physical barrier there.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Dee Dee?
Oh, and it doesn't appear that there's much regrading going on this property. Is that right, or did I miss something?
There's a little bit of cut in the front with the garage, but otherwise it's over the septic system. We would be looking at adding fill there so that we can get those septic systems high and dry, and then just cutting out an access to get into the garage.
Okay. And again, under the elevation above grade of the deck and what's underneath the deck?
So the deck would be the same elevation, the 14.5 feet, and underneath you're looking at 9 feet. So you have a good 4 feet, 5 feet of space under the deck.
Okay, so that's gravel again, or whatever. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from other commissioners?
Janet, I got a question.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
I have the same comment about the retaining wall. I just wondered if that could be softened with some plants.
There's a healthy amount of vegetation on the seaward side.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. The retaining wall on 53, the only way you can see it is if you're out in the dune, and there's actually all naturalized vegetation pretty much in front of it.
Okay, and then I just had another question on the driveway, getting back to the driveways. They're going to be shell or a mixed shell with stone. Is there going to be an apron along the street? Like a paved apron?
No, Because the street's not paved, just a dirt road.
I see. So it's not necessary then.
Well, it would be a
No.
little incongruous.
Yeah.
I mean, at Little Beach Road at the cul-de-sac, there is already an apron, but that's the only one that we'd have.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Janet, real quick, I
Yep.
just wanted to follow up. 53, just as a reminder for the updated alternatives analysis, adding the note about the gravel under the deck and to submit the planting plans, which were apparently submitted but didn't make it into the PDF for 47 and 53 Little Beach. And that's all I have just on that end.
And
Okay,
just to
thank you.
share, I've already emailed you the planting plans.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Thanks, Thad. Okay, other questions, any other comments? I think a lot of, any lingering questions I still have will probably be answered at an on-site. One question I have is have you filed, where are you with ZBA on this?
We're scheduled for July 9th, I believe.
Okay,
It's in July, actually.
okay, okay, so it's all filed and.
Yeah, we got it filed, so it would have been heard like last week. It was supposed to be heard last week, and because this is clearly very much involves conservation issues, we didn't want to go through the zoning thing without first, coming through you.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Holt. I have a thought or a question or something. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but regarding the mitigation plan, it states that there is 1,730 feet of mitigation. Within that mitigation area, as I understand it, there are already a lot of native plants, and that removal of invasive material is very spotty, a little here and a little there. That's still 1,730 feet. Take another project where the mitigation is 1,730 feet, which is heavily invaded. So virtually the entire 1,700 feet is going to be restored. In this case, although it's 1,730 feet, it just didn't sound like there was much need. So, correct my thinking here that this really is going to be 1,730 feet of mitigation, not just several, handful of plants here and there.
Yep, Petey, I can address that. And you're talking in terms of 53, correct?
Well, that's a good question, because I saw 1,730 and then I saw 1,750 for 47, I think. So it was not clear.
Yep, I can address that with you. So if we're, I'll start on 53. So on property 53, where the mitigation has currently been offered, and I know you don't have the plan in front of you, so this will become more clear when we do the on-site and when you have the plan. But there is about 250 square feet of mitigation offered a little further away from the house in the dune where there is Japanese knotweed. So it's basically just sand and knotweed. So once the knotweed is taken out, it would be, pardon?
Go ahead.
Once the knotweed is taken out, it would be a bare area in the dune between two colonies of like bayberry and beach plum, and you'll be able to see it there. So we would be providing more bearberry to continue that colony in an area where there wouldn't be anything else growing. The other area of mitigation on that property, there are 4 Japanese black pine that have formed a little colony, and there's nothing growing underneath them. And if the black pine are allowed to continue, they are going to start shading out more of that heathland vegetation that's around that area. So our proposal for the mitigation there is to remove the black pine, and then there's nothing growing underneath them. And so by bringing in the mitigation plants underneath, we would be re-expanding that area of heathland dune vegetation where there wouldn't be anything else growing. So I totally understand your point, Dee Dee. In terms of, if there's still a bunch of natives in there and we just add a few more, is that really mitigation? But in these two particular areas where we would be planting, there is nothing else growing there, so to speak. So we're enhancing the adjacent colonies. And I can definitely point that out to you and explain it more in person on the on-site. That's not a problem. For number 47, in those particular areas where almost all of the mitigation is offered, those areas are currently, I don't have FAD's plan in front of me, but those areas are currently either lawn areas or areas for septic. There's no vegetation growing in the mitigation areas on 47 currently.
With the exception of the little stand in the way, there's some non-natives that are down there.
Yeah, there's like a little tiny area of like shrub honeysuckle. And again, I can show that to you when we go out there.
Okay, back to 53 for a second, just so I understand. So you're saying 250 square feet of the mitigation is the replanting of the area where you're going to remove knotweed. And then another 1,500 square feet is where the black pine colony is that you're going to remove and again plant native plants. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
And just one last clarification to underscore that, Jen. So on 47, the 1730 square feet is the mitigation there is the removal of the lawn and naturalization of that area with the exception of the 3-foot wide strip around the structure?
Yes, that's correct. It's a 30-inch wide strip around the structure. Well, there's 3 foot on one side, but 30 inches on the other. But yes,
okay.
that's correct. Yep.
And then the rest of that site is it planted with grasses? How does the naturalization of that site work?
So that area, because they will need those areas available during construction, this mitigation, and there's no, with the exception of this clump of shrub honeysuckle, there's no invasive management really that's necessary there. So we basically have to wait until that area is not necessary for construction staging and then seed it and plant it. So it's a little bit different in terms of, we don't have to remove any vegetation first. It will be part of a construction area that will then be restored.
So seeded with native grasses and then which will be left to naturalize?
Yes, that's correct. There's seeded with native grasses. There's a pretty extensive planting of shrubs, ground covers, and some trees that go back in there in addition to the seeding.
Okay, we'll see more when we get the actual plan. Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Anybody else on the call who would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Bill Litchfield, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Litchfield. Good morning.
Thank you. I will be brief because obviously you've devoted a great deal of time to this hearing. I represent the Eatons who live next door. And when the chair was asking earlier, Thad Eldridge, about where the lines were, and the response that Thad gave was, there are too many wetlands. It's a very telling response. This is obviously a sensitive area. A lot of the comments that I was going to make already have been made. I appreciate Callie's suggestion that the alternatives analysis should be stronger. The notion that there is no reasonable option other than those set forth which warrant a variant, I question that. No one clearly is suggesting abandonment of any of the 3 properties, and we understand the need for elevation. But there's almost circular reasoning in saying that the houses have to be expanded in order to offset the overwhelming costs resulting from the expansion. There are other alternatives. There are other homeowners in the neighborhood, including my clients, who have reduced or retreated or relocated in response to questions that the commission has had. So we are concerned, and there are other neighbors other than the Eatons who are concerned. We appreciate many of the questions which the commission has asked today, and I trust that with an appropriate rationale for the variance, that one will be submitted, and obviously you'll be asking questions at the onsite. But we are concerned about it, and we have trust that the Conservation Commission will continue to monitor it. I mean, some of the points in the NOI, they're small, but fault can be found with them, and if need be, we will do so. But we trust that after the onsite and the additional information, we'll all have a better handle on what's proposed. We thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. I think we're all assuming that we will all be in that position after we've had a chance to have the on-site. Anything else?
Janet, I just had a quick thing about the on-site.
Yes.
I would imagine that if all of these changes can be provided by next week, that the commission could continue this to the 24th, in which case the on-site should be done sooner rather than later. Am I correct?
Absolutely. The sooner the better.
So what I'll be doing for the commission and Croft and Jen and Thad and Bill Riley is setting up a doodle poll that will allow us to figure out a time, and hopefully if people respond to that as quickly as possible, we can get going on this.
Thank you, Callie. Appreciate that, and everybody will jump on that and get it done. If we can possibly even get out there at the end of this week would be great, but certainly by early next week we would need to get this, to have everything, any revisions back to the commission in time for the next hearing on the 24th.
So is that something, Thad, that you can do? Can you provide the changes and talk to your clients about some of the other things we had talked about, as far as the plantings in front of the wall at 46, and I think there was another item, or the moving of the air conditioning units was also something you're going to talk to your client about. Can all that be done by next week, early next week, so that we can have something filed to the commission by Wednesday, the 17th?
Sure.
Great. Thank you. All right, then. Do we have a motion then to continue this to June 24th?
Commissioner Holt moves, are we moving all three?
Yes.
Moves the 3 hearings to continue to June 24.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Overall, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote on a continuance of all 3 of these to the hearing on June 24th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so unanimous vote to continue to 6/24.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. With that, before we continue to the next item, I want to call just a 5-minute break. If that's okay. Well, it's going to have to be.
I guess I'll stop recording then.
Yeah, just pause it. I think you have a pause button that you don't have to break it into 2 separate recordings.
No, I don't, but
okay.
I'll stop
That's
it. All right, so we'll return at 11:07.
11:07, 5 minutes, everybody. We'll pick this back up. Thank you.
1.
Okay, we're back. So Callie, want to pick up the next item on the agenda?
Yes. These are the continued hearings. These are the continued hearings. 45 Barcliff Avenue Extension, Barcliff Market LLC, SE 103411. Proposed restoration landscaping at 45 Barcliff Ave Extension, Assessors Map 16F, Parcel N1. I know I see Joyce Williams is on the call. I don't see David Clark.
Yes, he's here. I see him.
Oh, I see him. Yep.
Yep. Are they back?
David Clark here.
Hi, David.
So,
Okay.
we submitted a site plan showing the resource areas in relationship to the proposed work, and I also provided a more robust review of the performance standards. And Joyce is on the line to answer any other questions. I believe I submitted answers to the 2 questions the Commission had at the last meeting. So we're here to answer any more.
Okay, thank you. Yep, we received all of that. And I'll open it up to any questions from any commission members.
Clark?
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
I did a site inspection, and I just wanted to mention to Dave and the others that when I was talking to the owner, he had some very interesting and creative ideas for what to do with the site and so on. But some of the things he was talking about that he said had been suggested to him by consultants and so on were not shown on the plan. And I just mentioned to him that they'd have to be because he didn't want to, you shouldn't go forward without explicit authorization. And so I just mentioned that to all concerned, just to make sure that his enthusiasm for some of the suggestions doesn't get carried away.
Okay, thank you for that. So Joyce and David are, will check with their client to make sure that anything he wants to do is incorporated into this. Thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Dee Dee?
Commissioner Holt has a couple of things for Joyce. Under the proposed project number 4, there is a proposal, I guess, that the annual pruning would be permitted in perpetuity, which we, I don't know, I think we're a little cautious there in allowing that without at least notifying the agent of what the intentions are. And also I had a question about a skim coat of mulch will be used for moisture retention. What is that? And I'm assuming no pesticides. Am I correct? Oh, Joyce is muted.
Is Joyce on the call? Can she unmute herself through *6?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, there you are. Hi, Joyce.
Okay, sorry about that. To address Dee Dee's question, Joyce Williams, Landscape Design. To address Dee Dee's questions, the annual pruning in perpetuity, I would assume in the order of conditions would be a line item that would comment that we would have to require notification to the conservation agent prior to that work being done. I thought that was somewhat typically the way that was handled. No problem with that. Regarding the skim coat of mulch, that would be a pine bark mulch typically used in the landscape trade. And that's just to hold moisture and to reduce the amount of interfering seed sprouted stuff that might come up to interfere with the new mitigation or the restoration. What else? Was there another question, Dee Dee?
Well, I have a follow-up on the skim coat of mulch. So I would assume that the volume that would be used would be minimal, since you say skim coat, so that should there be a storm, this would not wash onto the pavements or the Barcliff Avenue extension and then find its way down into the wetland, waterway.
I don't think physically it could get to the waterway. However, I don't think that anybody wants it on the paved area as either. The idea is that it's just there during the time that the plant material is growing in and growing together, and it's not something that would have to be refreshed regularly. But to a certain extent, actually, just from the standpoint of applying mulch, you're actually less likely to have it erode if it's a thicker layer than if it's a fine layer, because if it's too thin, the soils above it can wash over it and be more inclined to go down the bank. And we're trying to both hold the disturbed area of the bank from the planting, as well as provide moisture retention and a little bit of weed protection, regrowth for the new plants. So a skim coat is an appropriate amount to use and would be just that.
Okay, you said and not replenish, just a one-time application. And no pesticides, is that right? I don't think...
It's possible that it might take, that it's likely to take 2 or 3 years for the plant material to grow in. So I think that could perhaps be addressed when pruning is addressed, as to whether or not a little more mulch is needed or would be helpful.
I see. What about the pesticides?
I didn't hear you.
Oh, I don't think I saw in your proposal any anticipation of using chemicals, herbicides.
Oh, no. Actually the invasives there are no invasives on our client's property. The invasives are part of the plant material that's on the neighboring property to the north, and it grows over and consumes that bank in its branching rather than in its root growth, and has to be pruned back. That's why we need to prune back every year. It's actually just what's encroaching,
Okay.
but not from the root system.
That was all I had. Thank you, Joyce.
I have a question for Joyce.
Yes, Tom.
I don't know if it's part of his property, but you mentioned the north side. That bank, for lack of a better term, seems to be quite denuded. And I didn't know if that was part of his property or not. But it certainly looked like it could wash away in a storm and probably needed to be stabilized. And I didn't know if that was part of what you were thinking about, or if that was actually the neighbor's property and not Barcliff's.
If you look at the plan that's up on the screen now, David has shown vegetation to the northwest, which is on the neighbor's property. And as I say, it overhangs, and actually I have been told, now I saw this property first and this plan was done in the winter, but I was assured that particular hedgerow, if you will, of various things, including a lot of honeysuckle and a lot of vines, bittersweet, and that sort of thing, overhangs that entire area that we wish to plant mitigation, and that it has to be pruned back in order to keep it from encroaching even further. So that was our reason for requesting annual pruning, because we're not asking to disturb that area, and we can't really disturb it because it's not on our client's property.
The latter part of your answer is what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, Callie?
Janet, I have a question for
All
Joyce.
right. Yes, Bob?
On the tree well, Joyce, is that going to be raised, the perimeter, so people don't fall into it on the patio, or is there going to be a grate over that?
The idea was that it would be raised, Bob.
Okay, like 6 inches or?
I think it would be minimally raised to, the key would be to avoid a trip hazard, have it be high enough to be noticeable, but not higher than necessary to protect the plant and retain the soil behind it.
Okay, and will that be a different like color than the patio, or is that going to be identifiable like to someone so that they don't fall into it, or?
It may be made out of the stone that the wall's made out of, or I'm not exactly sure what that material is. That's between the landscape contractor and our client. I did not spec the material per se.
Okay, so it's not going to be.
I think it's wise that there be something to differentiate it. I'd prefer visually to see it be stone as opposed to the paving material.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Holt, I have one other thing that I forgot to mention. Joyce's Descampsia, is that native to this area?
I didn't hear the name.
Descampsia? You're planting 50 of the ornamental grass?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody? Last call, questions, comments? Callie, anything?
I think at the hearing on May 27th, you had asked for some monitoring. I have a very kind of sketchy note, so I apologize, about some monitoring or reporting from Joyce or from whoever's doing the work. Is that something that we could just include in the order, that requirement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so with that, are we ready to schedule this to continue it to the work session on July 1st for approval of an order of conditions?
Commissioner Holt, I'll move that, so moved.
Okay, second?
Clark seconds.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue this to the work session on July 1st for approval of an order of conditions. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so we continue to July 1st work session. Thank you, David. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Okay, Callie.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is 39 Homestead Lane. Ann Poppleton, trustee, is the applicant, and Ann R. Poppleton Revocable Trust is the owner. SE 103412, proposed removal of non-native vegetation, replanting with native vegetation at 39 Homestead Lane, Assessor's Map 15C, Parcel 21. I just want to mention to the commission that David submitted some revised materials, and there are a few items that the commission had asked Lindsay Strode for. He's been in contact with me, and we just haven't been able to find a time to meet in such a short continuance time. So that's why you don't have the materials from him. And so I would hope that maybe today we can review what David submitted and allow Lindsay to have a little bit of extra time between now and the work session to submit his materials in hopes of a continuation to the work session in July.
Okay, I'm happy to conduct a review of the revisions that David sent in. Callie, do we think that there's any likelihood of or chance of the commission wanting to question Lindsay Strode about any of the changes to the plan? Do we want to continue it to the next hearing date to make sure that everything is ready to go to the work session on the 1st? We could,
yeah, we could do that too. I mean, there is a little that week of time buffered in. I know that Lindsay's just been flat out with work, and I know there's some other things that he's dealing with. So I think that might be enough time if we just continue it to June 24th and it be a quick sort of review of just Lindsay's materials.
Yep, okay, that's going to be the idea. Okay, so questions or comments on the revised performance standards?
Commissioner Holt, I had, oh, yes, I did have one. The page on page 2, where is it? It's number 6, which concerns active nesting or breeding, and this just states no significant or active nesting sites are known to exist within the area to be disturbed. And usually our standard order condition is that this shall not be, no grubbing out, this shall not be, work shall not be done on the bank during nesting season. And I imagine by the time this project gets underway, nesting season will be well over.
I think we would generally absolutely include that usual language in this order. Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments?
Clark here.
Yes, Tom.
Dee Dee raised, I thought, an important issue, which is saying that you don't know of something doesn't mean that you've actually inspected. So I just was curious if they had actually inspected the site to see if there were any nesting areas.
David Clark here. We did inspect the site, and as far as what the regulations in the performance standards say, so it talks about active dens, and it talks about nesting sites for herons and ospreys and things like that. We did not sweep the site for nesting sites for robins and small birds, which is not specified in the regulations or the performance standards. But I understand your standard condition that no grubbing can occur during the nesting season of all critters, and I don't think Lindsay will have a problem with that either.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody else on the call who would like to make a comment or ask a question? Okay, do we have a motion to continue this to the 24th of June for the final review of any revisions that are submitted prior to going to the work session?
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Is there a second?
Clark seconds. Oh, go ahead.
Any seconds. We need to assign the second role.
Yeah, you didn't assign anybody today.
I didn't. I know. We have a bunch of them coming up. So Tom, you're now elected from here out. Roll call vote for the continuance to June 24th. Ms. Holt.
Aye.
Mr. Kitts.
Aye.
Mr. Walls.
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. It's continued to June 24th and then hopefully to 7/1 work session. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to read the following continuances just for the public, if that's okay.
Yep.
And then you guys will do a vote on the continuance. So 14 Pine Ridge Road, 14 Pine Ridge Road Realty Trust, Cynthia S., Paul D., and Samuel D. Dollinger. Sweatland and Sweatland are the trustees. SE 10-3413. Proposed construction of an addition on a crawl space foundation. Proposed deck expansion at 14 Pine Ridge Road. Assessors map 8C, parcel 24. The applicant has requested a continuance to June 24th.
And just so for the context for the rest of the commissioners, Callie met on site with David Little last week, and they had a conversation about the appropriate mitigation to balance out the increasing coverage on this site. And she made some pretty specific recommendations to him. He seems to have accepted it, so he needs a continuance to finish the work on the proposal to capture that agreement in principle. So hopefully that's fine. So do we have
Is
a
there a
motion?
motion?
Continue. Sorry?
Commissioner Holt, move to continue to June 24.
Okay, thank you.
Second, Clark.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue this to June 24th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Uh,
I vote aye as well, so June 24th.
Okay, the next item is 305 Main Street, Timothy C. Emerson Revocable Trust, care of Peter Emerson, Susan Gordon is the trustee, SE 10-3393, proposed demolition of cottage, reconstruction of construction of new cottage, construction of building addition to a single-family home at 305 Main Street, Assessors Map 16C, Parcel 33. The applicant has requested a continuance to August 12th.
Oh, August 12th.
Commissioner Holt, move to continue to August.
Clark seconds.
Roll call vote to continue this to August 12th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so. August
Okay,
12th.
34 Hallway Street, 34 Chatham Village Trust, dated June 5th, 2015, and any amendments thereto is the owner. Valerie G. Cottrell and Howard Gould are the trustees and applicants. SE 10-3404, proposed raise and replace single-family dwelling and associated site improvements at 34 Hallway Street, Assessors Map 17C, Parcel 16A. Applicant has requested a continuance to June 24th.
Commissioner Holt, move to continue to June 24.
Clark second.
Roll call vote to approve the continuance to June 24th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so continue to June 24th.
Okay, then the next items are the items that you already scheduled for hearing
Yep.
during your declaration, and that's been posted on the website.
Yep.
I just received this morning during the hearing a request for a continuance for 552 Orleans Road. So that's the Hung Gately LLC, regrading of resource areas and sedimentation of salt marsh. They asked for continuation until the July 1st, 2020 work session.
Are we waiting for materials?
Yes.
Okay, so, is there a commitment I mean, I'm happy to go to the work session and vote on a final enforcement order for this, so long as we get the materials, in advance.
I guess at this point, given the extent of the back and forth that's been happening with this project, as far as getting the materials, I wouldn't recommend drafting something without reviewing these materials prior.
Right, so my question is, should we continue it to the next hearing to have an opportunity to look at the revisions before going to, I don't want to start preparing orders and going to a work session and we're still waiting for materials.
I had suggested to Nick to continue it to the work session, thinking that there would be possibly more time to have a discussion at that point of the violation on the work session, not with the understanding that an order would be, like a restoration order would be drafted.
Okay, so the restoration order then would be coming in the August work session.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So he'll still get us material in advance of the July 1st work session, so we can at least come to a agreement in principle and begin the drafting process.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion then for that?
Motion to continue to, did you say June 24?
July 1st work session.
Oh, sorry. Motion to continue to the July 1st work session.
Clark second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue to July 1st. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Hitz?
Aye.
Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so that's going to go up on July 1st.
Okay, and then for 114 Putnamicket Road, owner William G. Aschenbach, vegetation clearing, regrading, construction of a stone wall, patio, fire pit, trampoline, ball court, and white wooden soundboard / movie screen. Now this item, we did receive a revised plan, and I believe that Phil Cheney is also on the call today. I saw him earlier today, and I'm just scrolling. Yep, he's here, and he's able to talk about the revised plan.
Madam Chair, Bill Riley on behalf of Bill Aschenbach.
Yes.
Things I've learned since our last discussion, we met out on the site with Mr. Aschenbach, Phil Cheney, and David Clark, and David Clark's also on this call. And the swimming pool apparently was built over 20 years ago. And the flat area that's the subject of our discussion was created at that time. And while we were standing at the edge of that flat area, looking down towards the wetland, Phil opined, and he'll be able to explain it also, that the oak trees there, which are actually pretty tall, he said they're about 25 years old or 20 years old, which would make them sort of contemporaneous with when this flat area was actually created. And so I just want to make sure that the members are clear that Mr. Aschenbach didn't create the flat area. You know, he put up the volleyball court and the trampoline, and they did remove a couple of trees and planted a lawn. But I think we have a good plan, and so I'd ask Phil to introduce the plan and tell what his thoughts were on the project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do you want to pull up the plan?
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, it's up.
Okay, Phil, are you
Very
there?
good. I
Yes.
am here. Do you have me?
Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. Very good. What I did is you had the plan from previously where we were working on the bank and restoring those areas, removing the brush, and replanting those spots that were erodible and had been covered with brush. And we've expanded that planting now up to remove much of the lawn area around the volleyball court and the trampoline, and getting as much vegetation restored back to the 100-foot line, even where we can. Included with that, we saw there was room to move the trampoline back from its current location about another 4 feet. Thank you. And enabling us to plant a little bit more on the wetland side as well. We tried to maintain a 6-foot lawn border around the volleyball court, just from the practical and safety aspect of being able to use that still. But we've restored everything else that is possible in that area. See, it's somewhat shaded in green, from behind the movie screen all the way down the bank and along the top of the bank, the volleyball court, and again up to the 100-foot line in between the trampoline and the volleyball court. And just to be clear, if you have not seen the site or whatever, the movie screen area, what you're seeing there is looking like a lot of structure. Those are just some wooden braces that are hardly interfering at all with the 100-foot there. And really the vegetation around those is growing up quite nicely. So I don't see any issues in that spot. I also included on the note the arrow pointing in towards on the other side, actually, on the boxed note with the arrow. Yes, thank you. About removing some of the topsoil that was added near the crest of the bank, which could be burying some of those tree roots and could be compromising their health a little bit. So as part of that, removing the brush, pulling back that soil and then planting the new plantings you see there, I think it'd be a very fine restoration.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Questions, comments from the commission members?
Clark here.
Yes, David. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, Phil, when we were talking on Monday, I don't recall you mentioning to me at all that the flat area was created by the prior owner. Did I misunderstand you?
Sorry, I was talking with you on Monday?
Yes.
Oh, I think, Tom, you mean Bill Riley?
No, I thought I was talking to the owner.
Oh, no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's
My
okay. You
mistake.
talk, Phil is the architect for this restoration.
My mistake. Okay, well, let me rephrase it. When I was out there talking to the owner on Monday, I didn't hear him tell me at any time that flat area had been created, as I think Mr. Riley just represented as being done by the prior owner. But
Well, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And Tom, Phil Cheney, Dave Clark, and I met with Bill Aschenbach on the site after the last commission meeting that dealt with this property. So we all had a better understanding. And it was part of that conversation where Bill made it clear that, the flat area was there when he bought. He's only owned it since 13, I think. And and then so a little bit of a supposition that when they built the pool, they clearly had to do some extensive excavation. And so where did they put the dirt? Well, the flat area was not natural, and that was the point Phil was making to us out on the ground. And when he was talking about the age of the trees along the edge of it. So if you want to ask Phil about that, that might help elucidate the issue.
no, you've done an excellent job. Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments from other commission members?
Del Vecchio here.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
A couple of things. First of all, on the very west end where the trampoline is, where that bank has been cut out on the very west end of the trampoline, the left side of the trampoline, as we look at the plan. Yes. Within the 100 feet, there's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 feet of banking that's eroded. It's pretty visible. Is there anything going to be done about that? I know the whole bank with a trampoline has been, what has been carved out is eroded and not vegetated. Is there going to be anything done with that bank that's within the 100 feet?
Bill Riley here. I think we can have Phil modify the plan so that the area of the bank there would be planted with something up to the 100-foot line.
Yeah, we could specify that some soil is just packed in there to support that in that area and have that planted.
Okay, and the other question was the trees along the southern line where the mitigation is planned, right along there. Those trees compromised because of the fill and maybe the loam that it was put down to create the lawn. And the tree roots are running out of oxygen, maybe some water. Will that area be excavated a bit before it's planted?
Yes, as I explained before, yep, with that note there, we'd just be removing the topsoil from along that edge there that might be compromising those roots. I mean, there's not really any conclusive evidence that that's what's happening there, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to pull that off.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
I have something.
Yes, Dee Dee, go ahead.
Phil, this is just a process question, I guess, and it sort of gets to what your response to Bob Del Vecchio's questions. When you, I know you don't do the work yourself. You will turn your plan over to a landscape company, and then they will go ahead and implement your plan. Are you on site to oversee it?
Not typically, unless the client determines that's necessary.
So you hand the plan to them and say, "Here, go do it," basically.
Yes, and it being an accurate plan, working with Clark's engineering, it's all pretty easily determined.
So in your answers to Bob, how will the landscaper know of his concerns without there being a note on the plan or some kind of a additional protocol material that you would provide?
Well, there's a note on the plan that talks about removing the topsoil, and we're going to modify the plan to show the planting on that banking by the trampoline, and then of course the contractor has to have a meeting with Cali before any work is done.
Okay, I'm just want to make sure that that whoever it is that's going to do the work understands some of these things we've been talking about. The other question I have is, I think the plant selection, is nice, and the trees as well. But I'm wondering, what will you cover the ground with in between plants? Because I know you plant, you space the plantings as to how big they'll be in 3 years, I believe. So roughly. So what is going on the ground to stabilize the soils in the meantime and to keep people from running in and out of there?
Yeah, included in the note on the plan is that the areas in between would be seeded with a fescue mix.
That's grass.
Yes. And that will be, it's be growing amongst the shrubs, be unmaintained, so it's just going to grow up and hold the soil.
Is there anything else you would commonly use besides grass? I mean, I think what we've seen in some places is when grass is planted in between typically it's a mitigation area, that it ends up being weed whacked or mowed, so it's maintained as a lawn. It's not allowed to naturalize.
With the density of the shrubs going in there, that would be really hard to do. I mean, these are all 4 to 5 feet on center. You'd really have to be a master with a weed whacker in there. I mean, I've seen situations like you've talked about, and that'd be cases like where I've seen high bush blueberries planted like every 10 feet or something, and yeah, people mowing all around them. But this is a densely planted, 4 to 5 feet on center. You'd have to be really determined to get in there with a mower.
If that's sufficient for the rest of the commission, then.
Well, we'll have the usual kinds of annual monitoring reports during the 3-year period during which those plants are growing to make sure that the grasses are not being cut during that period. And presuming that Phil is right, at the end of that 3-year period, they will have grown to such an extent that it's not feasible to get in there anymore. But of course, we can make it a continuing condition to leave it to naturalize.
And certainly, for this and for the future, if the commission had a recommendation on some other, material in there that would grow and not choke out the shrubs being planted, I'd be happy to entertain that. But I found that this is what typically grows in the understory in these open sites, and is a good ground, good erosion control, and while things are getting established.
To that point, Janet, may I make a few comments?
Yes, go ahead.
Phil, based on your professional opinion, would a conservation type mix of grasses and maybe some other, I don't know, native flowers or whatever work in place of the fescue grass, or have you found that really doesn't survive in such a high density of plant material?
Well, it's sort of a mix of both. In one place, it doesn't survive too well. In some spots, some of the taller perennials can actually, tower over the lower growing shrubs in the different areas, and so they can just outcompete some of the shrubs. Whereas I find the fescue grasses tend to, keep a pretty modest growth height and are amenable to both.
Okay. Is it possible, Phil, to include in the order that maybe you don't oversee the construction, but that you're present at the pre-construction meeting? Is that a possibility?
I mean, that's certainly acceptable, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if everybody looks at the screen, I was wondering if there could be, and I don't want to propose anything, I would, I guess, defer to Phil and others. Is there any way to demarcate this in some way? I sort of feel like this side of the planted area is demarcated by the trampoline, and this side is demarcated by the volleyball court, and this area is demarcated by what's there now for the movie screen. Is there anything that maybe could be like stones every 2 to 4 feet or something that's minimal but could demarcate this area from this area?
Yeah, Riley, we can do that.
I mean, I was reluctant to include that originally just simply because with the activity involved adjacent to it there, I didn't want to create any hazards, stones or wooden posts and fencing that someone could collide with and cause injury.
Oh, that's a good point, Phil. I hadn't thought about that.
Is there anything that's sort of fencing or required for the trampoline and for the court, like a safety fence that maybe could also come around this area here?
Yeah, typically that's not something. I mean, a fence like that is usually more of a hazard. It's an obstacle than a benefit.
Would you be willing to maybe just consider it? Consider something in your sort of professional opinion, and if you can't come up with anything because of the safety issue, just maybe come to the next, like the work session, if this is being continued to then to speak to that?
Yeah, one thing I maybe could suggest would be, in the area that you're most concerned about there at the 100-foot line,
yeah,
that perhaps a section or two of fence, like the 1 foot, the one rail high in the center of that, where as long as we're not going out to the corner near the court or the trampoline, that might be enough to just sort of really delineate the area.
Yeah.
That would make some sense to me, I think. That would be far enough away where it wouldn't be a hazard.
Could you add a note on the plan to that effect and show where that would be so that the guys
I can show that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Callie, anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. So then we will have, Phil, you'll revise your plan to add the plantings to address the erosion on the western side by the trampoline, and add a note for the single rail fence location along the 100-foot line. And we will start work on a final restoration order. So I think we are ready then. If those two things come in, Phil, in the next week, we can get this ready for the work session on July the 1st.
No problem.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to continue to July 1st?
Mr. Holt, so moved.
Tom?
Oh, second, sorry.
Okay. Roll call vote to continue to July 1st. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Kitts?
Aye.
Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so. All right.
Madam Chair, Phil Riley, thank you very much for your time and help.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riley. Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Callie,
Signing
onward.
off.
Okay, 41 Wood Carver Knoll, we already discussed
Yep.
at the beginning of the hearing. So 27 Forest Beach Road, tree removal, vegetation removal, and regrading. The applicants requested a continuance to June 24th. And when I talked to Phil and David Clark, they have a plan already that's very close to coming to the commission, but I had suggested that maybe they hold off so that to give the commission a little bit of extra time rather than 1 or 2 days to review the plan. So that's why they continued to the next hearing.
Thank you for that advice to them, and if they're still on the line, thank you guys for agreeing to that, because we really don't want to get things 1 or 2 days before.
And,
So
and
do we need a motion then, or are we, that's just a, yeah, okay, that's good.
I think it would be good to continue it since it is a violation.
Okay, then we have a motion to continue this to June 24th.
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to continue this Forest Beach Road to June 24th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Kitts?
Aye.
Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Holt moves to adjourn.
I had a question though. Can I pop it to Callie before the,
Sure,
we vote
before
on
we
the
adjourn.
motion?
Yep.
155 Oyster Bluff. Did we send a letter yet?
I had drafted the letter and I sent it on to the chair and vice chair for just a quick review. And so I'm prepared to send it at the end of this week.
Yep, I have to look at it yet.
Okay.
I noticed
you.
it this morning and I missed it and I was like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Did we get Didi, you moved. Tom, you seconded?
Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roll call vote to adjourn. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Look at that, 11:56. 4 minutes early.